All right, let's get a new 30-minute game going. Got the black pieces. 1e4, 1c6. Something I'd like to do in this game and for the next, maybe the next week, maybe the next month, really until it becomes second nature, is check the checks. Meaning, before I make a move, I want to check and see what checks are available to my opponent and what checks are available to me. So right now in the very early game, our opponent has not developed any pieces, so they don't have any checks available to them. I also similarly do not have any checks available to me, although queen to a5 starts to look appealing once they do this. So I'm going to do that before every time I make a move, play 1d6 to respond to this, avoiding en passant. And then I think if they want to push d4, then we can play d5. They take. I think we take back with the queen. Already fairly unusual for a caro. Maybe d5 was the right move there, still permitting en passant, resulting in the same sort of queen capture. So before I make a move, are there any checks available to my opponent? None that I can see. Rooks can't move. Knights are too far away. Bishop is blocked. This bishop can't hit my queen, which is on it. Can't hit my king, which is on a light square, and then the queen doesn't have anywhere it can move to. I have a couple checks available. I'm going to hang on to those. I don't think those seem very useful right now. I'm going to play bishop to e5 and then e6 to sort of prepare the traditional caro-kann defensive structure, and then proceed with our kingside development. I'd like to get castled. I'd really like to get castled, given sort of this weird exposed queen that we have. Just being thoughtful and careful about that. E6 looks good. Checking for checks is how I want to proceed, but before every move, maybe down to like 10 minutes on the clock. So here, no checks again. They just move their dark squared bishop, which, as I discussed, is not a threat to my king, which is on a light square. So I think I'm safe to play e6. This is not a threat. This is not a threat. No way they can get at our king at this present moment. Obviously, that may well change. I will want to be cautious. Maybe knight out. Not a lot of great knight options that I can see. Knight out to c3. Again, not threatening any sort of check that I can see. Perhaps threatening coming out here to hit our queen, but I think we're safe against that. Important order of business. Do I want to move the queen out of the way? Moving the queen, say to like b4 or to c7, would open up more of a path for a dark squared bishop, which I like. But it does take a move to do that. I think that's worth the time spent. And I think I prefer queen to c7 here. I think I prefer queen to c7 just because queen to b4 feels a little bit aggressive, feels a little bit exposed. And if they play b3, we haven't really accomplished anything, I don't think. So let's drop our queen back to c7, opening up some more squares for our dark square bishop. Maybe out to c5 or b4. And our opponent's position looks a little bit cramped already, which is good for us. Good for us. Perhaps they're trying to develop queenside. Maybe queen comes out. Nope, they get another knight out. Still no checks available to our opponent. They don't really have any squares they can move their queen to. The knights are still too far away to deliver check. I think we're safe here. Let's go ahead and get our bishop out. Let's go to c5. That feels fine. Feels like a good, well, c5 and d6 both look good. And so does b4, to be honest. They all look very good to me. D6 is a common idea when we want to arrange this queen bishop battery, but that will be backwards. Maybe not that. They also have this knight protecting the h2 square, so assembling this battery to deliver checkmate on h2 doesn't look quite as good. We'd have to spend another tempo getting our bishop out to g4. So maybe, let's say c5. Let's say c5. And then we could do something like knight out to g4. Okay, so here we go. They move their light squared bishop, perhaps preparing to castle kingside. Still no checks available for our opponent. This is looking all right for me. We have this check available to us. I think they would take here, and then we would hit them again with check, and they would retreat to either f1 or e1, ruining their castling. But I don't think that's worth a full piece. Don't think that's worth a full piece. Maybe we go ahead and develop our knight out to f6 and prepare to get castled. They want to push this pawn, we can drop back, queen up, bishop back, and then threatening this and checkmate if we can deal with this. Knight. Expecting our opponent to castle kingside, and we will do the same. Nope, they play h3, sort of a waiting move, curbing the development of our knight, or of our bishop, and I think that is important. It's more difficult now to trade our light squared bishop for this knight, protecting the h2 square. We also can't get our knight out to g4, potentially taking here. So, double trouble. Maybe we'll develop our other knight before castling. Our opponent still doesn't have any checks available to them, so we are still safe here. And as we get towards move 10, I'm going to be a little more thoughtful about what checks do we have available to us. Okay, so they play g4, threatening our light squared bishop. We have the opportunity to drop back, play h6, and then all the way back to h7 if they want to continue to harass us with their pawns. Are there other moves that are available to us? We could take here, prompting take back, knight takes, and then we have the opportunity to take here on f2, hitting them with check, and then maybe getting our queen out. That looks like it would get very dangerous very quickly. But I think I'm willing to make that happen. So let's analyze that a little bit further. They're so cramped in here. So we do bishop takes on g4, pawn takes on g4, knight takes on g4. So we've got our knight out on g4. If they castle, we don't quite have checkmate because their knight is guarding this h2 square. But we do have some very dangerous ideas. Maybe if they castle, we could play bishop takes on f2, rook takes, and then queen out here with check, and then maybe we could deliver checkmate that way. But I don't think it's likely that they'll castle into danger. So let's see what happens. Takes. Knight on g4, I think, is still the most likely scenario. And then maybe they play something to prevent that. Like rook over to g2, for example. Mm, we could play. No, we can't play queen to h2 because again, this knight is guarding. We could. Oh no, that doesn't work. What if we do knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes? I don't think that's any better. I really like having a knight out on g2. That feels very threatening. I'm going to go for it because I like that we have our pieces sort of aligned with this attacking area. We want to trade off our light square bishop anyway, so I feel like 2 pawns is an okay trade. It's not amazing. Takes, takes, takes. Now we have 2 pawns for our light squared bishop. We have the potential to deliver check here. It's protected by our knight. Their king will have to move to e1. Then we have queen over to g3. That looks very threatening without that pawn on f2, supporting all of the pieces in there. So this is starting to look a little bit fraught for our opponent. Here we go. That's a good move. Pawn out to d4. If we take it, they take back with their knight. So what can we do here? We don't have any checks available to us. We can move our bishop out to here. Yeah, bishop out to b4 looks decent. I don't think we can do anything about this knight here. Takes, takes, and then I don't think we can do anything further to harass our opponent. Yeah, so maybe we move up. We can move up to b4. We can move up to d6. Neither of those look very good, if I'm being honest. We could drop back to b6 and then push this pawn. Contesting for control over this diagonal. I like that, I think, the most. Well, I guess we drop back. They have knight to a4, and then they could potentially trade there. So maybe that's not the best. I think, yeah, we can move up here. Gosh. Actually, what about this? Bishop back. If they play knight to a4, we have bishop to a5. They want to take. We can take back with check. And then we're potentially threatening their knight. Their knight might need to come back. And then I think we have more threats to come. Okay, let's do that. Drop our bishop back. If knight out, then bishop up. Still no threats on our king, which I think is really nice. And their position is very cramped. They have nowhere to move their queen. Castling obviously looks terrible here. Our opponent certainly doesn't want to do that. What else might our opponent do? If they push this pawn, obviously that's disaster. I think a good next step for us is pushing this pawn to c5. Ideally, I would like a piece on d5 to prevent this pawn from coming any further. If they push, I think we can push again, opening up these sort of dangerous tactics against their king, which is super exposed right now. Still no need to castle or get our king to safety because I haven't seen any checks yet. They've really cramped their position, and I think their light squared bishop, the one piece that can actually potentially check the king, has nowhere to go. These both lose it, and then these don't do anything. Um, I guess the one possible thing would be if we castled kingside, their light squared bishop would come out to h7 and deliver a check, and then we would take it. So, because our king is not in danger, I don't feel the need to castle quite yet. I do like the idea potentially of castling queenside, getting a rook out to the semi-open d file, and that looks very dangerous. See what our opponent is cooking up. They've got themselves into a fairly cramped position, and I wonder how they're going to unstick it. I don't see a lot of options. I'm less than willing to make trades right now because we've traded off a minor piece. But, well, the right situation could warrant a trade. What moves are even available to our opponent right now? Um, I think if they move this knight out of the way, I think we have bishop takes on d4. If they move this knight, they pretty much lose it. There aren't a lot of appealing squares to go to. I guess they can move out here or out here. Dark squared bishop has not a lot of squares to go to. Light squared bishop has not a lot of squares to go to. Geez, I think maybe the move is move their bishop over to e4, push this pawn, and then get their queen out somehow. But even that doesn't look very fun. That or knight out to a4, hitting our bishop, in which case, as we discussed, we have bishop to a5. Yeah, 12 moves in. Our position is very comfortable. We have pretty much all of our pieces developed. We haven't castled yet, so we don't have our rooks in game quite yet. We may not need that depending on how things shake out. Ooh, what is this? Rook out to h4. How very exciting. This gives us an opportunity to potentially develop our knight here to reinforce our knight with another knight. I like having the knights connected. I think that's a very strong defensive idea and leaves our knight on this nice advanced g4 outpost. We could play f5, which it makes castling kingside a little bit less appealing. Although maybe it makes it a little bit more appealing if we wanted to get our rook in the game on the f file and we could somehow open up the f file. But I think knight to f6 to reinforce this knight looks ideal. I don't love reinforcing a piece with another piece rather than a pawn. Although I guess h5 is an option to reinforce the knight. Seems like it could be good. But I like knight out a little bit better. It's marginally more active for this knight, which is sort of awkwardly placed on d7, potentially opening up the d file for attacking if we castle queenside. And this ruins kingside castling for our opponent. Not that I think that was very much in the cards with these two missing pawns over here. Hmm. We could still play h5 and then I guess knight up doesn't work there because then they have knight takes. My idea was like h5, knight up to e4, and then we could play like knight takes on f2, hitting their queen. I guess just making their queen move out of the way and not really doing much else. That's a lot of work for not a lot of reward. Maybe that's not a good idea. Looking at long castling here, getting doubled up on the d file, maybe rook up to like d7 and then our other rook over to d8. Still haven't moved very many pawns. Okay. Their bishop comes out. Castling queenside looking like a very poor decision right now. Um, hmm. So I think what they're looking to do is like take. So maybe we do play h5 to reinforce this knight. If they want to take, we can take back. Are there any other? I don't think we have any checks available to us. This is very close, but obviously loses to the rook and to the knight. I don't see any other checks available to our opponent. Our king is looking a little bit airy right now, so I do want to be cautious there. So I think here we play h5 to protect this knight outpost. There we go. If they want to take, we can take back and then deliver something that looks a lot like checkmate. I guess they do have this escape square for their king now that they moved their bishop out of the way. But that starts to look very dangerous. They take? Okay. I suppose trading is good for our opponent. We could move back with our knight. Yeah, how do we want to respond to this? Move back with our knight. Or capture with our g-pawn. I like this advanced outpost for a knight, I think. I want to hang on to it. So I'm going to go ahead and capture with a g-pawn. And then push f5 maybe to really reinforce this knight. And then if they do want to trade something for it, we get an advanced passer. Now that their dark squared bishop is out of the game, we could pin this knight to their king. We could also long castle, which is looking very appealing now, get our king to a little bit more safety. Now that we sort of have this hole in our defenses here, we have this open file, or semi-open file here. Actually, is there a way to deal with this knight? We could push this pawn. We push this pawn to deal with their d4 pawn. I guess we could push either one of these pawns. Probably pushing the e pawn is a little bit better because we're looking at castle queenside now that our kingside defensive structure is a little bit ruined. I think we castle, rook over to the d file, and then push a pawn. If they want to take, then our rook takes their queen. Yeah, that feels good. I guess the other danger of castling and then pushing a pawn here is that then this diagonal is available for checks. So I want to be careful about that. Maybe move our king over to b8. Sort of a simple, no-nonsense defensive move. Okay, so they're... Ooh, that's smart. Their knight moves back, preparing bishop takes on g4, pawn takes on g4, rook takes on h8, picking up a rook for free. So if we go ahead and get castled, we can trade. This becomes an even trade. I guess even this looks bad. Well, yeah, bishop takes knight, pawn takes knight, and then even if they did rook takes pawn, I guess then we could come up. Another thing we could do is move our rook over to g8, move our rook over to this open g file, and start threatening activities there. That looks pretty good. Oh, but then they take our h pawn, which is defending. We could play f5 like we had discussed, adding another defender in that way to the knight, and I think that looks really good. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. They take, now we can take back, and then we have this nice pawn chain. So I think that's one of the advantages of a stronghold, I think this is called, is when two pawns are supporting like a knight or a bishop. I think knights are especially strong in strongholds, is that if they take, like they have just done, we can take back, and we have a little pawn chain over on this side of the board. And that looks very threatening, I think. We could potentially play f5 and really reinforce this nice little pawn chain here. I haven't been moving forward with my plan of calling out checks, which I think I should resume doing as quickly as possible. That's a miss on my part. First, I want to talk real quick. I do want to get castled, get a rook over to the d file, and then we can pick up this pawn. Right now, the pawn is not hanging. It's protected by their queen. So I do want to be cautious there. Her king is looking more and more open air, which I really don't like. Still no checks available to our opponent. They've traded away, it looks like both of their bishops at this point, and a handful of pawns. So I'm not worried about bishop attacks. This knight is too far away to do anything. This rook is sort of caught in this corner. Their queen could maybe start to entertain some ideas of checking us. So I do want to get castled, maybe ideally next move. If they move their f3 pawn, we have this check available to us, queen to f3. We also have queen to e5, but that, of course, runs into pawn takes e5, and I don't really want to lose our queen to a pawn. Seems like a poor trade to me. But yeah, if they want to push this to try to contest our pawn chain here, we have the very nasty looking fork on g3, forking their king and their rook. And I think that would spell demise pretty quickly for our opponent. But again, next steps, most likely castling, rook out to the d file, take this piece, and we might actually have another tactic to win a queen. I had a tactic that won a queen in a recent game, and it would be cool to see again. So the tactic would look like we castle, rook out to the d file, bishop takes on d4, our rook is x-raying their queen, and then bishop takes on f2 with check. They have to respond to the check, and then we take their queen. So that's looking like an appealing option. Our opponents' defenses are sort of in shambles. They can't move either of these pawns without risking imminent danger to their king. It's looking pretty nasty over there. And I think if we can just get our king to safety, we'll be in a very nice position. Sort of expecting to see a queen move from our opponent here. Yeah, and then probably long castles. So let's go ahead and get castled ourselves. Still no checks available. Yep, they long castle. Can we still do this? I don't think so. Because the takes. Yeah, that doesn't look quite as good for us, does it? We could double up our rooks on the d file, giving up this h5 pawn. Or we could... No, we can't move our rook up to d5 to protect this pawn because that is attacked by their knight. So that unfortunately does not work. So rook up to d6, and then maybe rook over to d8 looks decent. If we could get our bishop over to f4, that would be a skewer, skewering their queen and their king, which is really powerful. We can do that with our queen right now, but there are no pieces to support our queen, so we would just lose our queen. We could play e5 to attack this pawn, and they're potentially losing their queen to our rook if they want to take. That looks pretty good. I think that looks pretty good. And then we have tactics over here. Many of their pieces are on dark squares, and we have a dark squared bishop. So if we can get our bishop over here, like if they want to move their queen, I don't know, over this direction or something, we can get a bishop over here, forking their knight and their rook. That looks pretty good. Obviously, they cannot take here because they will lose their queen to our rook, which would be, I think, a fabulous trade for us. I like that we have potentially pawn takes here, or bishop takes. Our position a little bit more fragile than our opponents because we're down a piece. I'm starting to regret that since we didn't really convert that sacrifice piece into a strong attack. Here we go. So they push. Of course, if we take here, their knight could come out hitting our queen, which I don't like. We do have the option of taking with our rook, which I think looks really good. Forcing their queen out of the way, I think. First of all, any checks available. This file is wide open, which looks really bad, but they don't have a light squared bishop, and the queen is on a dark square, so it can't easily get over to a light square. It can move over. If it can move off the board, it might be able to give us a check, but it cannot, so we're safe there. So I think potentially rook takes, queen needs to move like over out of the way, and then we can figure something out. So let's do that. Nope. That loses. Shucks, our rook to the knight. That was a mistake. We'll take back with the pawn. Bummer. All right, so we've lost an exchange. We're down a full rook at this point. Our opponent has an extra piece, 1, 2, 3, 4 to R3. They have 2 rooks to R1. Not looking super hot. If they do want to take here, we have bishop takes on F2, which looks nice, forking their rook and their knight. Or their rook and their knight. I don't think they're going to go for that, though. And we don't have a way to attack their king very effectively, as far as I can see. We do potentially have rook takes, bishop takes on F2, rook down to H2, and then bishop back to E3 check. And their king runs away to B1. And then we can't do anything to their king on B1. Let's take a moment. Do they have any checks available to them? They do have queen to D7 check, supported by the rook. So that would be, they would need to do a queen trade, and then they would lose the rook as well if they wanted to take their queen back. So that's not too bad. This is a check. I think we need to go for any other checks. I don't see any. It's just this open file here. Just this open file. We could play rook over to D8, but then they have queen takes D8. Our queen needs to take back, and then we would truly that would trade a queen and a rook for a queen and a rook, and that trade is not favorable to us. We don't want to make even trades right now. So I think move over to F2, hitting their rook. Expecting to see rook up to H2. And then we have bishop to E3 check, king over to B1. Very close to having dangerous ideas, but just not quite there. And this is a losing proposition if they want to check us here, or if they want to check us down here. That's also no good. Their rook comes out to d3, perhaps to block this check. But they've left us with our choice of pieces to take. So I think we can pick up their rook for free. Unless I'm missing something. They don't have... Oh, I see. So they will probably try to take their rook over to c3, pinning our queen to our king, which is a good move. But I think 2 rooks for a queen is a good trade for us. So if we can trade 2 pieces for 1, I think we'll have a little bit more of an advantage. So I'm going to go ahead and take this rook. They'll come over here. And we can even, I think, move our rook over to d8. Yeah, to hit their queen. Well, no, we can't quite do that. So if they come down, that'll be with check. So we will need to respond to that. But we'll still be hitting their queen, so that looks decent. We also have this check that we can throw in. We could potentially checkmate our opponent if we play this correctly. They haven't moved any of their pawns. So if we can force them back a square, we potentially have a back rank checkmate. So I think if we do like bishop over to g5, king to b1, rook to d8, and their queen moves out of the way, say to here, that's checkmate. So let's throw in this check. And if they move out, then we have this similar idea of rook over to d8, pinning their queen to their king. So I think in our opponent's haste to set up this skewer, ooh, yeah, this is looking pretty good. So let's do something similar. Another advantage of this bishop move was that, okay, so they take. We will take back. They need to move their queen out of the way. They do so with check. Okay, this is getting dicey, but this is potentially very good for us. So I think if we move, so our legal squares are 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving back doesn't look very good. I don't want to get our king trapped in this back rank mate situation. Moving to the side gets in the way of our rook. I think moving up and towards the center seems like the best possible maneuver. Move towards the center, they will likely take our bishop. We will check them, and then they will need to trade. Yeah, so they will likely take our bishop, check, and then their queen will need to drop back to c1, and then we'll trade our rook for their queen. So they'll still be up in knight, but we have all these advanced pawns, and I think we could just push pawns towards victory. With our king sort of more towards the center of the board, we've activated our king in the endgame. They will not be able to stop our advance, and we'll get a queen without too much hassle, I think. I think despite how it looks, I know they have a queen and a knight, and we have a bishop and a rook, but I think we might have the advantage here. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Of course, if they do something else, like drop their queen back to g3 or something, or try anything too crazy, we have rook to d1 checkmate. So we have a very dangerous idea here. I'm eager to see what our opponent comes up with. I think taking the bishop would be really bad for them. They have this check available. That's what I was a little bit worried about. We can move our king. Again, I don't want to move to any of these squares because that blocks our rook's access to the d1, potentially checkmating square. So I think maybe king to b7 looks good. Ooh, something I should have been more careful about was skewers, but fortunately in this case, we do have just king takes on a5. If our opponent wants to try to get their knight into the game, they will lose. If our opponent wants to check us again, I think now maybe we do move back, back to this b8 square. Very thoughtfully, very carefully. So c7. We got 9 minutes on the clock. Expecting like queen to c5 or okay, yep. And then we'll go back another one. Maybe queen to e5. In which case I think we just go king to a8, and then I don't believe they have any further checks available. So getting our king out to the open was a nice idea. You don't think it's going to work here, unfortunately. Okay, move our king back to a8. Our opponent is out of checks. I think our opponent recognizes that they're in danger here. And I think a really strong move would be to give up this attack and play something like a3. With a3, we have, yeah, it's a good move. So, how do we proceed? How do we proceed? We have rook to d1 check, rook takes g1, and then we lose our bishop. We lose our bishop, and then probably a pawn pretty much immediately after that. We could potentially push this pawn. Oh, but then we're in danger of back rank mate. So we'll need to push like b6. So we can't do this. Okay. I think maybe we push a6. I have a sticky on my monitor, snorkel thoughtfully. If we push b6, I think our opponent can come over here and do something to check us into oblivion. And so we need, I think this is how we need to run the escape hatch. They'll take, check, takes. They take, yeah, check, moves out. And then another advantage of this is we have a rook guarding the promotion square. And this is how you want to do it. Check. We have king to a7. They managed to fork us. All right. So this game's going to be over pretty quickly. Well fought by our opponent. We will fight it out to the bitter end. Try to get our king out into the center, push some of these pawns. Get up and into the middle. Maybe, I mean, these pawns are where I'm trying to get to right now. To see takes. Maybe we can push. It seems unlikely to me that we will be able to. Yeah, our opponent's playing this very well. Best we can hope for now is a substantial blunder or a draw. Probably queen takes, king up. Oh. lots of, I would venture to say, meaningless checks. I think our opponent can deliver checkmate with the queen and a king, but they do need to get their king involved. So I think king coming out be a good next couple of moves. Obviously, we can't move over here to join our pawns, so I think pushing a pawn, forming a little pawn chain doesn't seem like a bad idea. They want to push again, we could take. Takes. They will push another pawn. Okay. This is a great way to checkmate. Just do a classic ladder checkmate. Two queens on the board, and then push them like a ladder, like a step ladder, left, right, left, right, left, right. Forcing my king across the board to checkmate. Looks like they will do it upwards, which is as good a way to do it as any. Try to stay close to the queens, just in case, they accidentally move to c2 or something. Seems unlikely. Our opponent has played this very well so far. Keeping towards the center of the board. Queen to h4, checkmate. All right. So a dubious sacrifice there at the beginning, I think, led to our demise. Our opponent very effectively, switch to the analysis board, our opponent very effectively traded off pieces until we didn't have enough to really mount any sort of effective attack. Yeah, and we could see this in the analysis. Move my window a little bit. Down here, you can see pretty even advantage, I think, until my sacrifice, which was ill-advised. It's a better move here. Takes with the pawn. Okay. Decent. Yeah, bishop takes g4 is a blunder. I've got another blunder coming up here. Was my rook move. One was a mistake. Yep, that knight to a5, knight to a4 move that we identified was a really good move in that position, hitting our bishop. But I guess potentially, I wonder, they played that, we played that. What happens here? Probably they can move their other. Oh, they just move pawn to c3, and then they have this really nice pawn chain protecting from checks. Okay. 5 is good. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Queen to d2. Ooh, that's a saucy move. Look at that. Queen takes g4 was best. Queen takes g4, pawn takes, and then they have rook takes h8 check. King moves out of the way, and then rook takes a8 check. So they get both of our rooks. Oh, good night. Oh, that would have been brutal. That would have been a sweet tactic there. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad they didn't see that. Oh, big moves potentially from our opponent. Okay. We both long castle. Good moves from both. They left their pawn hanging. Sure. Had an opportunity to capture a free pawn. Oh, yeah, so I should have captured here. Bishop and a rook for a queen is a good trade. So I should have just gone for it there. Okay, they push. Rook takes, huge blunder. They capture with the knight. Yep. Takes d5. Takes f2. This was a miss. Oh, that's interesting. Missed a better way to tactically win a knight. So picking up the free rook was not the right choice. So I do wonder, had us play rook over to d8. I see. Queen takes. Probably, yep, queen takes. Rook takes. King takes. And then they can move their. They can move their rook out of the way. Okay. So rather than pick up the free piece, they were able to pin. That was a good move. G5 is great, or is best. King B1 is the only good move. I should have just captured here. And I think, yeah, our opponent spotted the potential checkmate, the potential back rank checkmate that we had. Driving our king back and then playing a3. Anything else, I think, like queen takes bishop, is a huge mistake. Rook check. This is forced. Yeah, like that. And then we've got a really good position here. But instead, they, of course, managed to fork our king and our rook. Bummer. I'll do my best to push pawns. No such luck. And then we have a long, drawn out checkmating sequence. Our opponent manages to pull off a ladder mate. Well done. Yeah, there, another loss. Sort of going back and forth around the 1100 rating. I think this idea of looking for checks should help. And then just not making silly sacrifices. I think that was foolish, and I need to keep that in mind for the future. Maybe at my rating, I am not allowed to be sacrificing pieces. Something to keep in mind. All right, have a good one, y'all.